fell in at late notice on this. Great opportunity. Um, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Here I am looking at some pitfalls. Just a brief introduction. My day job is Director of Research and Monitoring with the Surrey Wildlife Trust. I'm still a relatively newcomer amongst you all. I've been into perhaps about 2016, 17. I've really got into spiders in a big way, as was alluded to before. Partly because of the Wild Guides book has been such a wonderful resource to inspire people to get into spiders, and me included. And just most recently, and this is probably why I'm here, no question. Of late, this rediscovery of Alopecosa fabrilis, the great fox spider, made the news in 2020, and then I had a British Wildlife article on that as well. So people will be, some of you will be aware of that. So I'm going to talk for 20 minutes now, giving you an overview of what I've been doing subsequent to that discovery, and set it in the context of the spider's status in the UK. It was discovered in 1868 on Bloxworth Heath by the Reverend Octavius Cambridge, who lived just down the road from here, and he must have been walking one day over Bloxworth Heath, and sure enough, he discovered Alopecosa fabrilis, and how could you miss it? And so that was written up in his Spiders of Dorset later on. And miraculously, you can find this book online. It's amazing, absolutely amazing that you can find these things all online as resources now. And that's his descriptive write-up of it as well. It was Tarantula fabrilis at the point, and people started looking for it, and more records were made across in an eastwards direction, including and up to Morden Bog National Nature Reserve as it is today. Wonderful site, and there it is. That the spider actually features on the citation for that SSI, along with Altala lucida. And its only other site, really, only other proper location away from there, was on Hankley Common in Surrey, and at some point, we don't know, haven't pinpointed exactly when, but between 58 and 71, it was discovered on Hankley Common, and we don't know who by either. So there's a lovely picture of Hankley. Now, what we mostly know about the spider, its autocology, is really been mined and studied in Belgium by this guy Dries Bonte, who did his PhD on distribution of spiders in coastal grey dunes, and this is where the spider is found in those countries, in the Low Countries, and very much a spider of grey dunes, and it because of those exacting habitat requirements, it's in multiple populations in a sort of metapopulation type structure, but the outcomes of his studies is that it is vulnerable to local extinction because of habitat maturation and habitat destruction historically. And so it is no great surprise that it is found, its habitat in Britain is on very sandy heathland. Morden must have changed a bit in the interim time, but Hankley certainly is. It makes a very good impression of coastal grey dunes. Here's a picture of open sand. grading into lichen and bryophyte bonded sort of sand with mature heather juxtaposed with that, but essentially sort of broken up and not continuous like mature heath, allowing lots and lots of sunlight to the substrate, because it is undoubtedly a thermophilic species. Here's some other typical habitat, and not surprisingly, we've got on Hankley, Hankley, the SS is part of an SSI which goes from Thursley, the famous lowland heathland National Nature Reserve, Thursley Common in the east, across to Frensham Common in the west, and Hankley is the central common in there. And this SSI supports Achelis sultata, one of very few inland populations of that. I gather it's also on Thetford as well, but they're the only two inland populations. And this beetle too is typical. That's a coastal beetle, pretty much, Opatrum sabulosum. But this is present on Hankley as well. So part of a ecological community of grey dunes that are manifest inland in the UK. Here's our page from the Spider Recording Scheme, and this summarises its critically endangered status, based on that very restricted regional distribution and its vulnerability, therefore, because of that, and the fact that it's a large spider probably in low numbers because of that, and its 2-year maturation, what have you, gives it all character vulnerability to credit this, to merit this status as critically endangered, and this is its status in the review there. So there it is, a male and female. It is a large lycosid. The female's up to 18 millimeters long, head to toe. Male's slightly smaller, 15 to 16 mils. Apart from the size, there's a juvenile on the left, and I think, yes, some other pictures of juveniles here. Even in the tiniest juveniles, here we are. Even in the tiniest juveniles, these white spots are very prominent, more so than its only likely confusable species, which is Alopecosa barbipes. Because I've seen so many of these things now, I can tell the difference between these, even with the smallest juveniles. These little tram lines on the female's head, this must be a juvenile female. Even in the tiny juveniles, these are already here, and that isn't present in Alopecosa barbipes. In the mature spider, they've got this unique black underside. Wonderful. That's a male in his spy pot there underneath, and this is a female in a spy pot underneath, showing this black underside. And tentatively, it's probably quite likely that this is something to do with an adaptation to retaining externally sourced heat from the substrate, because a study that is referenced in my British wildlife paper, it was an investigation into this mainly for reptiles, and it showed that having a black underside is compatible to retaining heat, and probably because of the spider's size, it actually matters to it. Body mass ratio to its size, and probably gives it an advantage, especially perhaps because it is a nocturnal spider. As an adult, it's most active nocturnally. It's a habitual burrower. This female has just come out of this burrow here, showed with the red arrow there. So this is a female taken at night. Yeah, pretty much totally nocturnal as an adult. The juveniles less so. They're busier during the day and can be disturbed from litter under heather in the daytime. But adults, yes, totally nocturnal, really. And as a lycosid, a pursuit hunter running down its prey, this male has got some kind of pompilid wasp here getting its own back, it must have. There it is. Mating activity seems to be the adult. Most adults have noted sort of late August through September into October. This seems to be the peak of adulthood, and this is when males are certainly seen. And these photos capture a male. I observed a male approaching a female in a burrow here, and this photo here is actually a pair mating in a small burrow here. You can't see it from this photo, but me looking at this photo, you can actually see there's two spiders. So this is when they're most studyable at that time. But I'll come on to the end. This year especially, I've been looking, and females are actually probably viewable throughout the year. In fact, I eventually made that rediscovery in 2020 by pitfalling. I had been roaming around at night with a torch looking for 2 years prior to 2020, but putting down some pitfalls finally did it. This was the first male that was rediscovered in 2020 in its pitfall. What to say about pitfalling? Yes, you can't use a killing agent here on these sites because they've got, apart from anything else, they've got highly protected reptiles, sand lizards, smooth snakes, and sand lizard juveniles readily fall into these traps. So it's got to be. I use half-pint plastic beer glasses, so they're deep enough to keep the spider in, but obviously doesn't kill them. But subsequent to this, over the years since 2020, I've realised that actually, if you use a head torch, LED head torch, it is a very good way of looking for nocturnal lycosids. Trichosa shows up easily, but if you, it's interesting because if you've got people next to you, and you say, look, can you see those little green spots there reflected in the eye shine? They can't see it. It has to be lined up on your head, and then you get this reflective eye shine, and it's quite distinctive when you know what you're looking at. And of course, then you can approach with a magnifying glass, what have you, because even the tiniest juveniles get shown up with this technique, and you can be clear on the ID, what you're looking at, and it's by far the easiest way of surveying for the species. And this is sort of bycatch in a way of my studies so far. Made some very good records of other very rare spiders. Zora sylvestris seems to be quite widespread across the Thursley to Frensham Commons SSI. I made a new record of Zelotes longipes. Hadn't been seen for a long time. Had been recorded before, but hadn't been seen for a while. And the heath grasper, the S41 species, the priority species, also seems to be fairly widespread across the SSI. So this is a summary slide of my studies and my what I found in terms of the distribution, the internal distribution on the site. So in 2020, this was where I found it. The X marks the spot where the previous records had come from, but pitfalling there seemed to suggest that it had gone from there. So there is movement even within the site. You know, there's I mean, local extinction within the site itself, but the V mark there was the pitfall transit, the line of pitfalls, and that's where it was found. Then in 21, I went to town with some intensive pitfalling, including on the adjacent sites within the SSI, Thursley and Frensham, and drew a blank there. But I did then find a second population in the south of the site in Hankley, and extended this northern population, the limits of the northern population as well. Now in 2022 there was a big fire across Hankley, a big wildfire, 88 hectares it was, and I was actually on holiday at the time, and when the news broke of this, and I was really worried, couldn't wait to get back to work out, you know, exactly the limits of the fire and how much it had threatened where we knew the spider was. And miraculously, it was actually put out right as it reached the northern population. The fire spread northwards with prevailing wind, but it was put out right as it reached here. It still burnt part of the limits of that population, but again, I managed to, you know, the purple lines show further records of the spider. And then 2023, last year, I'd been meaning to look on this golf course. Keep losing my cursor, sorry. I've lost it again, never mind. You can see the Hankley golf course there labelled, and I actually managed to get out and ascertain that it's present on the golf course too, and moreover, so that's an extension of that northern population, but it also seems to be quite numerous there. That's not surprising. Well, it is. We knew the golf course. The golf course is part of the SSI, and it's a very good site for the Heath tiger beetle, which is another important invertebrate on this site. We knew that was the case. The roughs were very good for that, so it sort of aligned with that, the discovery of great fox spider on the golf course. So I've established that we've got these two populations that are separated because there are conifer plantations in between and other unlikely habitat in between. But we've got this lion's mouth population, that's just a local place name up there, and the Kettlebury population in the south, that's the Kettlebury Ridge, that's along a ridge line, and especially the south facing line of this, it probably goes all the way along here. But all these X's, I've looked varying degrees of intensivity and not found it on what is otherwise looks ideal habitat for it. And then down in Dorset. So meanwhile, I've also been looking down there and to try to having established I've got this methodology to apply that to the Morden Bog NNR. So I got Natural England's permission to look here. I pitfalled there and walked around head torching as well in September 22. Didn't find anything, even though these were the sites that, you know, we knew these sites within Morden Bog were where it was most recently seen. But an adjacent site, Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Trust site, just on the other side of the B Road down to Wareham, Great Ovens Nature Reserve, always looked to me like the most likely habitat where the spider would occur. So on the last night I was down there in September, I was head torching there and found this juvenile on the left, because it's a juvenile and was going to be an important, record. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I tried to start raising it in captivity, but it was tiny, tiny juvenile, and 2-year maturation. It was going to take forever, and of course I failed in that. But the Natural History Museum confirmed by DNA that it was that by the March of 23, and so in September 23 I went back down to Great Ovens Heath with the Art Trust site manager. He was very keen to come along with me, and he was there, and sure enough we found some sub-adult, 2 sub-adult females and a sub-adult male, so reconfirmed for Dorset, so that's great. And of course the guy down there, Chris Dresch, his name is most anxious to go out there now. He knows how to find them and try to work out if it's elsewhere on the site. So back to Hankley. It's an MOD training site. This is a common site across there. Small arms training. It's not a range site as such. It doesn't have red flags up when you're not allowed on it. It's open access, and there's public rights of way crossing it. So it's people, dog walkers, horse riders, what have you, are allowed on it. Mountain bikers, but also it is used for basic infantry training. It's also used as a very popular filming site. It was used in the Bond movie Skyfall, famously, Black Widow. This is actually a Netflix location here. Those are supposed to be the gates of hell, I think, in some production or other. And this I took this photo actually in late spring 21. So I just established that it was on this is the lion's mouth here. I'd established just in the previous autumn that it was here, and lo and behold, I got down there in April 21 only to see that this film set was erected right over the site. So it just witnessed to the limitations of site protection, really. This was the extent of that 22 wildfire, looking across the drop zone at Hankley Common. This is 88 hectares worth of burn here. Just to show you another photo here. It really was quite extensive. This is actually overlooking where the Red Cross was in 20, where the Slit Trenches site that you will see on the SRS as being John T. Denton's most recent sighting before we rediscovered it on Hankley. That was burnt to a crisp. But so what's to be done conservation-wise? I'm getting to the end here. If I've gone over, I'm sorry, I haven't got a clock in front of me. There is a Natural England-led landscape recovery pilot, landscape recovery project, nascent in the area, with the Thursley to Frensham SSI at the core of that, to look to establish better ecological connectivity across the piece, across the Wealden Heaths area, and actually aspiring to go into Hampshire, into the rest of the Wealden Heaths as well. So this should be a vehicle to do some species recovery work as well. These are some examples of species that we will probably try to reintroduce. The natterjack has been reintroduced already at Frensham Common, but it's probably functionally locally extinct again. But so they're Natural England keen to try to reintroduce it again. That hoverfly is very, very rare, one of the rarest heathland hoverflies. But that is present at Hankley. And then here's the heath tiger beetle I've mentioned already. This is a really important. Well, I haven't really bottomed out what the 22 fire has done to the heath tiger beetle here. I mean, but prior to that, at least, it's a very important heath tiger beetle population and the source of animals for reintroductions elsewhere in the West Sussex heaths, especially under the Back from the Brink project. So there's no reason why we shouldn't loop the great fox spider into this suite of very rare species that benefits from the Heathland Connections focus in future years. So I've put the ladybird spider up. This, as we must all know probably, that, you know, here the strategy has been to spread the risk of local extinction to otherwise very, very confined species like the ladybird spider by establishing other populations elsewhere in the vicinity. And this is what there's been done with the ladybird spider, especially down in Dorset, South Dorset. So I've had conversations with Helen Smith, who's obviously had long experience here with large spiders, the fen raft spider, and doing just this for the fen raft spider. So I've got a little nascent group together, a steering group of key persons, of people who'd be involved in this. Waverley Borough Council, who manage Frensham Common for the National Trust, so the National Trust as well, the MOD, then people down in Dorset as well. So I'm going to be drawing up a sort of conservation strategy for the spider, and it's very, very early days still. We need to work out, you know, first off, how expendable it would be to collect adults from the wild to then, you know, establish further populations. So bringing you right up to date, this late winter and early spring, I thought, well, you know, why not just go and have a look for it at night as well? And sure enough, it paid. You know, it was very easy locating some females that had overwintered, all looking very gravid. I have to say, they were very very large females, so they must have overwintered in that state. And one was collected entirely opportunistically to see if, you know, to observe her in captivity. So Darren Hill, the Waverley Borough Ranger, who's responsible for Frensham Common, he's set up a facilities a tank to watch this. So I gave him the spider. Here she is. She's got her egg sac in tow. I haven't got a bang up to date update from him, but last time I heard from him, she dropped the egg sac. It hadn't hatched, so I don't know what the exact state of play is at the moment. But suffice to say, she's being observed still. So, and these are some of the locations. Meanwhile, you know, we're looking for very ideal situations where potential reintroduction sites would be most suitable. They're sort of out of the way corners, essentially, of this complex, the site complex, that are managed by the ARC Trust for the rare reptiles. So they're monitored. They have plenty of bare ground. They're south facing. So yes, so that's that, and that's it. Yeah, hopefully that's within the 20 minutes.
Mike, thank you. That was